Piccolo enters Dragon Ball not as a rival, but as a curse fulfilled, the reincarnation of King Piccolo's hatred, an oath given flesh. He is born for one purpose: undo the one who undid his father. And yet, years later, the same figure stands quietly behind Earth's heroes like a watchful cedar, teaching a boy to breathe before he punches, choosing patience over spectacle, sacrifice over swagger. The demon becomes a guardian. The weapon becomes a guide. That collision, destroyer and savior in the same body, is not a contradiction. It's a map. What does it take to turn your darkness into your strength? This isn't just Piccolo's arc. It's a lesson in integration, harmony, and mentorship. In Western psychology, Carl Jung called it shadow work, the courage to face the parts of yourself you'd rather exile, and, in doing so, become whole. In Eastern philosophy, Taoism speaks of wu-wei, action so attuned to the flow of things that force becomes unnecessary, strength that looks like softness because it no longer fights reality. And Confucian thought lifts up the quiet dignity of the mentor, the one who shapes virtue not by domination, but by example, ritual, and steady presence. Piccolo travels all three paths. He begins as a concentrated shadow, a being of pure opposition. He hardens himself against the world, mistaking rigidity for control. But cracks appear where you wouldn't expect. A small child crying in a wasteland, a hand that moves before thought, a body thrown in front of a blast. Later, the demon fuses with the god, not to become a deity, but to become himself. After that, he steps back from the center, not because he is weaker, but because he has nothing left to prove. He chooses to be a teacher. So this is the journey we'll trace. From hatred as identity to harmony as practice. From the clenched fist to the open palm. From the roar of vengeance to the whisper that says, breathe. If you've ever felt defined by the worst thing inside you, by anger, by jealousy, by the story you inherited, Piccolo offers a way through. Not by cutting that part off, but by befriending it until it serves what you truly value. The demon who becomes a guardian is not a miracle, it's a method. Piccolo is born with a mission that feels like fate: avenge King Piccolo and defeat Goku. There is no soft prologue to his life, no seasons of innocence. He emerges into the world already armed with purpose, and purpose narrows the horizon. He trains alone, stares hard into empty landscapes, cultivates power like a religion. Every breath is a rehearsal for a single moment, the day he meets Goku again. Jung would say that Piccolo is the shadow made literal, the disowned half of the story walking on its own legs. The shadow is everything we refuse to accept in ourselves: our aggression, our hunger for control, our fear of being small. When we exile those parts, we don't erase them, we project them. Piccolo becomes that projection, the container for all the threat and rage the heroes won't own. And because the shadow is bound by what it opposes, his world shrinks to the outline of Goku's back. Watch him in those early years. He doesn't just want to win, he needs Goku to exist so he can define himself against the man. His hatred isn't only anger, it's structure. I am what I fight. It's how shadows define us when we won't do the defining ourselves. The irony is cruel. Every hour he sharpens his power, he also tightens the chain that keeps him circling the same star. The more he resists, the less he chooses. From a Taoist lens, Piccolo is a study in inversion. Wu-wei, effortless action, is movement in accord with the current of things. Piccolo is all current against, the rigid pine in a storm, the blade that forgets it will dull if it never sheathes. He forces results, grasps at outcomes, treats the world like an enemy to be bent. Taoism warns us that what is too hard will break, and what yields endures. Piccolo, then, is brittle strength, dazzling in a clash, but fragile in a larger life. Even his training reflects this imbalance. He drills for dominance, not for harmony; isolation, not relation. We see him stalking barren plateaus, practicing annihilation. We rarely see him listening. Confucian wisdom would notice the missing ritual, not chants or ceremonies, but the daily habits that stitch a person to a community: learning, teaching, eating with others, offering respect, and receiving it. Piccolo's early life has none of that. His ritual is refusal. And yet, there's a reason we're compelled by him. Shadows are not evil, they're unlived life. Beneath Piccolo's scowl is a raw truth, the part of us that will not bow. The child who learned that to survive, you must become steel. The adult who clings to control because the alternative is feeling how vulnerable you once were. In that sense, Piccolo is painfully human. He is what happens when pain becomes a plan. Notice how his obsession with Goku quietly shapes him into Goku's mirror. He studies the hero to defeat him, and in doing so, adopts the hero's discipline, endurance, and appetite for growth. Hatred, paradoxically, becomes a path toward likeness. The shadow wants to be seen. It also wants to be integrated. Piccolo cannot admit this yet, but his body already knows. When he pursues power, he is rehearsing a future where power serves something else. Philosophically, here's the trap he's in. The more he clings to vengeance, the less free he becomes. Freedom is the ability to respond to the world rather than react to a single memory. Vengeance is reaction cast as identity. In that cage, every choice is pre-decided. He will fight because he is the one who fights. He will refuse kindness because he is the one who refuses. He will stand alone because he is the one who stands alone. It feels like strength. It is a script. So Act 1 closes where Piccolo begins, a figure on a cliff, cape whipping, eyes on the horizon that always returns the same face. He is powerful, yes, but he is also small, compressed into one idea of himself. The East calls this disharmony. The West calls it a split self. We call it being stuck. The first crack won't come from a victory. It will come from a cry, high, frightened, human. And a hand will move before a mind can argue. That is how shadows begin to heal, in the moment you act out of something other than what you swore you'd be.
Piccolo's first compromise with destiny is practical, not poetic. Raditz arrives, and the demon stands shoulder to shoulder with his sworn enemy because the calculus is simple. The threat is bigger than their feud. But necessity opens a door that choice will later walk through. When Goku dies to hold Raditz, we glimpse something small in Piccolo's face. Not pity exactly, but the discomfort of witnessing a man give himself away for someone else. That seed will need time and the right soil. Enter Gohan. Piccolo doesn't take the boy in out of tenderness. He takes him as a weapon to be honed, potential wrapped in softness. His training is merciless: isolation, fear, hunger, the sky as ceiling and dirt as bed. He barks commands, withholds comfort, pushes the child past what any child should bear. It is not love, it is control, flavored as preparation. Underneath, a deeper fear. If Gohan stays a child, the world will break him. If he becomes a fighter, maybe it won't. Piccolo knows one way to survive: become hard. And he offers Gohan the only gospel he trusts. Jung would call this the shadow's first act of care. The shadow isn't tender, but it is loyal. loyal to function, loyal to survival. Piccolo protects innocence in the only language he speaks, severity. He mistakes cruelty for strength because his own childhood was a curriculum of violence. Yet, even in harshness, something more human begins to leak through. The boy cries, and Piccolo looks away a beat too long. The boy laughs at a tiny victory, and Piccolo doesn't silence him. The boy sleeps, and Piccolo watches from a stone with a gaze that is no longer purely tactical. A teacher is forming inside the warrior long before he admits the title. Then, Nappa happens. The battlefield is dust and noise, a theater built to punish softness. Gohan freezes under the weight of terror, the kind of terror Piccolo once baptized him in to make him strong. He sees the child he forged to be a blade, and what stands there is not a weapon, but a boy, small, shaking, calling out. There is no time for philosophy, no plan, no calculation. Nappa's blast launches, and Piccolo moves. Taoism would say he stops forcing and starts flowing. Wu Wei isn't passivity, it is action free of friction with what is true. In that instant, what is true is simple. Gohan must live, and Piccolo's body knows it deeper than his pride. He throws himself in front of the blow, arms wide, cape a failing shield, taking the strike that was never meant for him. The gesture is so clean, it erases every speech he ever gave about strength. It is not strategy, it is alignment, with life, with a bond he refused to name, with the man he could be. As he falls, the mask tears. He admits, if only in a rough whisper and a soft look, that this boy changed him. Hatred as identity cannot survive an act like this. It has met something older than rage, devotion. Jung's individuation isn't a meditation cushion revelation. Sometimes it is a body thrown between danger and the defenseless. The shadow, for once, doesn't consume the light, it shields it. In protecting Gohan, Piccolo protects the part of himself he had exiled, the capacity to care, to belong, to be responsible for more than his own wound. Confucian thought honors Li, the lived rituals that shape virtue. Piccolo's ritual here is not incense and bowing. It is a habit born in training that ripens into sacrifice. Stand between harm and the vulnerable. In that one movement, he steps into a role larger than rival or avenger. He begins to become a guardian. Afterward, Gohan breaks apart, and Piccolo, who has always been so precise with words, has very few. He doesn't indulge sentiment. He doesn't apologize for the brutality of his lessons. But the look is there, and the lesson within the lesson. Strength without tenderness is brittle. Survival without belonging is empty. The boy taught him this by needing him. Piccolo learns it by giving himself away. In saving another, he begins to save himself. The sentence reads like a proverb, but here it is simply biography. The first crack in the demon isn't defeat, it's love, expressed as a reflex. And once a crack appears, light finds every seam. By the time the androids arrive, Piccolo has outgrown the costume of pure opposition, but he hasn't yet become whole. He's stronger, wiser, and still divided. A warrior built from two ancient halves that once split to manage a contradiction. Power and protection, rage and responsibility, demon and God. On Kami's lookout, the thin air smells like history, and Piccolo faces the elder who is and is not his kin. The world is changing. Cell is coming. Half measures will not hold. The decision to fuse with Kami is not a power-up in his heart, it is an ethical move. He chooses integration over superiority. He has fused before, on nail on a dying world, a tactical graft that amplified his strength. But this is different. Coming back to Kami is not an addition, it is a return. It is a vow. I will no longer split the parts of me that frighten me. I will not keep serenity in the sky and ferocity on the ground. I will be one. From a Jungian lens, this is individuation made explicit. The self is not the ego swollen with victories. It is the center that can hold opposites without tearing. Piccolo's demon fury and Kami's patient vision were never enemies. They were incomplete truths. To live only as the warrior is to mistake righteousness for wholeness. To live only as the guardian is to mistake detachment for wisdom. Fused, they become a third thing, a presence that can act with force without being possessed by it, and can wait without abdicating responsibility. Taoism draws the same map in black and white, yin and yang interlocked, each carrying the seed of the other. Piccolo's new stillness is not weakness, it is coiled motion. His new motion is not frenzy, it is guided by quiet. Watch him after the fusion. The edges soften, not in resolution, but in reactivity. He listens more, he speaks less. When he does act, it is decisive, not the brittle decisiveness of someone trying to prove himself, but the elegant finality of someone who has already decided what kind of person he is. Confucian thought, too, comes into focus. Duty, yi, replaces pride as the engine. Piccolo does not protect Earth to outperform anyone. He protects it because it belongs to it. And because it belongs, he mentors. Not as a drill sergeant marinating in fear, but as a craftsman shaping character. With Gohan, with Trunks, even with Vegeta in rare moments, Piccolo's counsel gains a different texture. Less bark, more ballast. He becomes a teacher who can hold anger without passing it on, hold anxiety without spreading it, hold power without needing to display it. Then, Cell arrives, hungry, articulate, inevitable. The confrontation in Gingertown is a clinic in integrated strength. Piccolo's first act is not a roar, it is reconnaissance. He plays for time, asks questions, presses for information. Strategy is not a luxury now, it is compassion in armor. When the fight ignites, he meets Cell with a steadiness we have not seen. Each strike is measured, not manic. Each feint purposeful. The fusion has not made him invulnerable. Cell evolves too quickly for that. But it has given him clarity. He knows when to push, when to withdraw, when to call for help. Pride would have died on that street. Wholeness survives to warn the others. Even in the hyperbolic time chamber scenes around this arc, Piccolo's presence is different. He no longer tries to be the center, he tries to be sufficient. He advocates for Gohan without smothering him, challenges Vegeta without baiting him, trusts Goku's maddening calm without surrendering his own judgment. The man who once defined himself against Goku now defines himself by what he will protect and how he will do it.
Symbolically, the fusion is the opposite of what set his life in motion. King Piccolo split himself to prolong his will. Kami split himself to purge the stain and ascend. Both were evasions, brilliant, perhaps, necessary, but evasions of complexity. Piccolo's choice to rejoin is an acceptance of complexity. He will carry the contradiction instead of outsourcing it. He will be the storm and the shelter, the blade and the hand that decides when the blade stays sheathed. This integration also rewrites his relationship to fear. Early Piccolo feared insignificance. That fear wore the mask of vengeance. Post-fusion Piccolo fears failing those in his care. That fear wears the mask of humility. He studies, trains, and plans not to dominate, but to fulfill a trust. When he stands on the lookout, arms folded, watching the horizon where danger always brews, he is not a lonely sentinel anymore. He is a steward. The Cell Saga doesn't end with his triumph, and that is exactly the point. Individuation is not a shield against defeat, it is a way to lose without losing yourself. When the tides turn, when Cell ascends, Piccolo does not unravel into the old persona, he holds. He takes hits, he adapts, he accepts that the baton must pass to Goku, to Gohan, and he supports the handoff with grace. That too is Confucian, a master who knows when to step back so the student can step forward. Piccolo fused with Kami to become Super Namekian, sure, but the truer title is simpler, himself. Whole, he is finally free to do the simplest, hardest thing, exactly what the moment requires, no more, no less. There's a difference between a commander and a teacher. A commander imposes shape from the outside. A teacher draws the shape out from within. Piccolo learns this difference with Gohan, slowly, humbly, and it is the quiet revolution of his life. When he first takes the boy into the wilderness, his teaching is a fortress of thorns, deprivation, danger, discipline. It's love translated into the only language he knew, hardness. But the seasons turn, and something in him softens alongside the child who keeps coming back after every fall. Gohan returns from terror with gratitude. He returns from exhaustion with trust. The thorn bush does not kill him, it teaches him how to bloom. Piccolo notices. He adjusts. What emerges is not domination, but dialogue. He stands a few paces away while Gohan practices sensing ki, and instead of barking orders, he waits. Again, is all he says, not as a demand, but as a mirror to Gohan's growing will. When Gohan falters, Piccolo steps closer. When the boy steadies, Piccolo steps back. Taoist Wu Wei in green skin. Effort in the right measure, interference withheld at the right time. He begins to understand that strength coaxed is stronger than strength coerced. Against the backdrop of Goku and Vegeta's fatherhoods, Piccolo's mentorship takes on a Confucian clarity. Goku loves like the sky, wide, bright, sometimes distant. He allows trials to shape his son. Vegeta loves like fire, intense, exacting, often too hot to touch. He demands greatness as proof of blood. Piccolo loves like a pine on a mountain, constant, bracing, quietly sheltering. He embodies the Confucian ideal of the elder who cultivates virtue, not by crushing the sapling into a shape, but by shielding it from the worst winds until its trunk can bear storms alone. The Cell games make this visible. Goku steps aside and places the world on Gohan's shoulders. The choice is controversial, even infuriating to those who measure love by protection alone. Yet, as Gohan trembles at the edge of himself, it is Piccolo who kneels beside the memory of the boy in the woods and whispers, not with words, but with presence, "You are not alone." When the dam finally breaks, when the scream turns to lightning and the air itself recoils from the truth of who Gohan is, Piccolo does not cheer the power, he honors the becoming. His pride is not the pride of an artisan taking credit for a sculpture. It is the pride of water that once fed a root, now watching a tree bear fruit beyond anything it could have designed. He stands with the others as Cell staggers under the weight of Gohan's resolve, and his silence says everything. Not, "We won," but "He became." Under Jung's lantern, this is individuation by proxy. The former shadow has learned to midwife another self, to stand guard while someone else meets the deepest part of who they are. And under the Tao, it is the sage's restraint, to do less so the world can do more. The man who began as a blade learns to be a sheath, not to hide the sword, but to protect it, to teach it when to stay still and when to strike. By the time the dust settles, Piccolo's mentorship is no longer fear translated into rigor. It is care translated into structure. He corrects, but does not belittle. He pushes, but does not push away. He is firm so that Gohan can be free. This is the paradox of a true teacher. The better he does his job, the less visible he becomes. And so, when Gohan stands under the open sky, not merely strong, but oriented, not merely powerful, but principled, Piccolo allows himself a human luxury. A small smile, quickly hidden. The boy he once hardened to survive has become a young man who can choose when not to fight. That is what makes Piccolo proud. Not victory, virtue.
After the world keeps spinning, after gods arrive and universes widen, Piccolo steps 2 paces back from the center of the stage. To some, it looks like fading. To him, it feels like finally standing where he belongs. He isn't the flash of a new form nor the thunder of a last-minute save, though he can be when called. He becomes the gravity that keeps orbits true, the strategist who sees angles, the steady presence at the edge of the battlefield, the voice that says, "Think," when everyone else only feels. He is often the first to sense a pattern, the first to tell a younger fighter what not to do. Wisdom rarely makes headlines, it makes outcomes. This is Zen humility, the reed that bends so it can keep standing, the monk who sweeps the temple steps as the sun rises, no audience but the morning. Piccolo internalizes the lesson his life taught him at great cost, that strength without self is empty. Having fused with what he once disowned, he no longer needs the world to see him to know he is real. Western psychology would call this the fruit of individuation, the ego relaxed, the persona optional, the self sufficient. The performance falls away, the work remains. When younger heroes look his way, he doesn't take the moment, he gives it back. He says, "You've got this," and means it. He trains Gohan again when complacency dulls the edge, and does so without humiliation. He tutors Pan with the gentleness reserved for sacred things, balancing play with discipline, laughter with focus. He is still strict, but his strictness is in service of joy. Confucius would approve, the gentleman who practices Ren, human-heartedness, through ritual, consistency, and example. In the great tournaments and crises that follow, Piccolo rarely chases acclaim. He watches the field, covers blind spots, and chooses eliminations like a chess player who values position over spectacle. He fails sometimes. He learns. He does not spiral. The old shame, the need to prove that he has overcome what he was, has loosened its grip. He does not need to deny the demon or emulate the god. He can simply be the guardian. Taoism calls this returning to the uncarved block, the state before we hack ourselves into shapes to please or terrify. Piccolo is not unformed. He has been through fire and fusion, but he has recovered something original underneath all the forms, a calm that does not require victory, a purpose that does not require applause. He embodies Wu Wei not only in how he teaches, but in how he lives. Exertion where it matters, ease where it doesn't. He saves breath for what is essential. He saves fury for when gentleness would be a lie. There are moments, of course, when the story drags him back into the light, when the call is not for counsel, but for courage. He answers. He proves that detachment is not indifference. It is readiness without panic. Then, as soon as the sky clears, he returns to the shade at the edge of the field, antenna twitching,
eyes half-lidded, present. The camera moves on. He does not mind. If you listen closely, you can hear how his silence has changed. Once it was the silence of a weapon biding its time. Now it is the silence of a teacher letting a student think. Once it guarded resentment. Now it guards peace. This is the final synthesis. He is no longer the demon who needed to win, nor the would-be god who needed to absolve. He is not a symbol anymore. He is a person. The cape still billows, the stance is still severe, the voice still curt, but the center has softened. He can hold a child without fearing what that tenderness says about him. He can lose a fight without fearing what that defeat says about him. He can love without fearing what that love takes from him. Eastern and Western lenses converge here. Jung would say the shadow was not slain but seated at the table. The Tao would say the hard and soft have learned to dance. Confucius would say virtue has become habit. Zen would say nothing at all. Piccolo takes the watch at sunset, as he has 1,000 times. The horizon burns, then cools. Somewhere the next crisis will come. He will train, advise, step in, step back. He will keep the world turning in ways the world won't notice, which is perhaps the highest form of guardianship. He is no longer demon, not fully God. He is fully himself. And in a universe obsessed with extremes, that may be the rarest power of all.
What does it take to turn your darkness into your strength? If Piccolo's life offers an answer, it isn't heroic in the headline sense. It's quiet, patient, and a little ordinary. He didn't erase the part of himself that once wanted vengeance. He didn't pretend it never existed. He brought it to the table, sat with it, and learned how to let it serve a different purpose. That is the work of integration, not destruction of the shadow, but its reorientation. From a Taoist angle, Piccolo's path is a lesson in balance. The Tao doesn't ask us to cut away what's difficult. It asks us to find the motion that contains both. Yield and firmness, silence and action, each has its season. When Piccolo learns to move with the current instead of against it, his strength becomes less about force and more about fidelity to what the moment requires. That is wu-wei, powerful but unshowy. Confucian thought gives the story a social heartbeat. The highest power, Confucius suggests, is the power that shapes others for the better. Piccolo's final mastery is not a solo trophy, but a craft, the slow, steady shaping of young lives. He becomes the kind of elder who teaches through example, who builds virtue through ritual, steadiness, and presence. That kind of influence lasts longer than any victory cry. Jung brings this inward truth into focus. Individuation is not a tidy endpoint. It's the slow marrying of parts within us that once fought for control. Piccolo fuses his ruthlessness with restraint, his hunger with care. When shadow and light meet at the same table, decisions change. He can fight with clarity, teach with compassion, and step back without losing his center. Wholeness isn't the absence of contradiction, it's the capacity to hold it. So the final image is simple, a figure on a lookout at sunset, cape slack in the evening wind, not because he's given up being formidable, but because he's chosen a quieter kind of power. Piccolo didn't win by conquering the world. He won by conquering himself. If this resonated, tell us below. What's your favorite Piccolo moment? The one that showed you who he really was. And who should we pull apart next? Which character do you want to see through the same psychological and philosophical lens? Threads of Self is about looking beneath the clash and finding the human thread that ties us to a character's choices. Leave your thought. your moment, or your suggestion. We read every one. Thanks for watching.